Catch over the weekend. You wrote in your 10 thoughts for the weekend about kind of this important stretch of games for Texas over the next in the next four, where it is. Aaron, you have the standings of where it's at, and then and catch. Aaron also has. I also made sure we did a kind of a screenshot of what the other teams look like and what their schedule looks like. So, Aaron, if you could put the standings on the screen, is that the standings that's up there, Aaron? Okay, gotcha. Catch. I kind of give you the floor at this moment to kind of maybe lay out where Texas is and what needs to happen during this final stretch of games.
Well, I think my big overreaction. Sorry, I just saw Robert. Come on, Robert. It was tongue in cheek. I think my big overreaction is this might be the biggest game of the Steve Sarkisian era so far on Saturday. There's so much on the line simply because now it's amazing that we get into the 9th week of the season on Saturday, and there are 5 teams tied with 4-1 records. The expansion of the conference and the unevenness of the schedule making has us at a point where this is even possible. 5 teams, 4-1. And, you could make a case that Texas, I don't know that they gained from Oklahoma losing to Kansas on Saturday, because when we've been thinking previously about Texas the rest of the way, Oklahoma was in the 1 spot, and then it was a battle for the 2 spot. Now, Texas might be in a position where, if the season ended today, they would be on the outside looking in, because the only tiebreaker advantage that would come into play for them is their loss to Oklahoma. What they can't have happen this weekend, and this puts a lot of pressure on Maalik Murphy. It puts a lot of pressure on this team. It puts a lot of pressure on Steve Sarkisian. But this is why we go through 9 months of the offseason, for there to be big games with stakes. If Texas wins this weekend, it's not quite an elimination game between Texas and Kansas State, but the loser is in a real pickle with regards to potential tiebreakers at the end of the season. What Texas doesn't want to do is come out of this weekend with tiebreaker disadvantages against 2 of the teams that they're vying for positions for. So this is a real big game. Obviously, it's not as sexy as Alabama. It won't be as memorable as Oklahoma, but the stakes are really high, because while no Texas team has been 7-1 at this part of the season since 2009, a loss this weekend is a critical blow against Texas's chances of actually making the Big 12 championship game. And what happens Saturday in Bedlam, the best thing that could probably happen for Texas is that Oklahoma wins that game, because at the end of the season, Texas doesn't need to be even with Oklahoma because they have the loss. So I think that, the stakes are incredibly high. The season isn't on the line, but it kind of is, because if they go into the final 3 weeks either tied with Oklahoma and Kansas State or even, that's actually still a game behind, because one of the first things they do when they're in the tiebreaker situation is they go head-to-head. And in a 3-way tie, let's say with Oklahoma State, if it's Texas and either Oklahoma or Texas and Kansas State, they need to have that advantage in head-to-head. And look, we may do this again in a few weeks when Iowa State pops up, depending on whether or not they can continue to handle their business. But with 4 games to go, it's kind of impossible to predict what the hell's going to happen in the Big 12, because the Bedlam game on Saturday will give the winner of that game a real leg up into getting into the championship game. And then there's just a pile of other teams. And right now, Texas is in that pile. The good news is Texas controls their destiny. If they win their final 4 games, they're in Arlington, because they will then have all of the advantages that they need. Other teams will finish with 2 losses. Just win your games. But if you lose this one, it could prove to be very problematic.
Yes, Jeff Ketchum, obviously orangebuzz.com. And forgot to mention at the top, but the rogueshop.com is brings Overreaction Monday to you. Use that promo code Orange Buds for all of your legal CBD, THC, Morrisals. Been using that on my pinky toe as I try to do my recovery. So rogueshop.com, hit them up. We'll talk a little bit more about them in the show. Aaron, go ahead and put out that what the looks like from Catch's column, and we'll get to the super chat in a second. But from Catch's column, Catch, the remaining schedules for the top 5 in the Big 12. You went ahead and did a good job, so we just made it easy for us, right? Iowa State has Kansas, which they're obviously a tough team there. At BYU, Texas, and K-State. K-State, of course, has Texas this weekend, followed by Baylor, at Kansas, and Iowa State. Argument to be made that Texas is probably the toughest game left on Kansas State schedule when it's really ever been 100 with this one. Oklahoma, they've got Oklahoma State, which Catch has already just talked about, versus a West Virginia team that's not that good, a BYU team that's not that good, and a TCU team that is a shoulder shrug at this moment. Oklahoma State, which has got Oklahoma this weekend. Central Florida's not that good. Houston's not that good. And BYU's not that good. So for Oklahoma State, Catch, this is probably the toughest game remaining on paper on their schedule. And then there's Texas, obviously, with Kansas State, TCU, Iowa State, and Texas Tech. Catch, before we get into the super chat, your thoughts on what it looks like for everybody else in the Big 12.
Well, I think the winner of Bedlam this weekend, you just almost have to assume. I think there's a very good chance that both Oklahoma and Oklahoma State win out beyond this weekend, right? I mean, they could both lose games, I guess. But, boy, West Virginia, BYU, and TCU for Oklahoma, that feels doable. Oklahoma State playing Central Florida, Houston, and BYU. 2 of those games on the road. So, again, I think the 2 Oklahoma schools have the easiest paths the rest of the way. So the winner of that game, I think, puts 1 foot into the Big 12 championship game. The loser will need some help. But, I think Kansas State, they have the toughest schedule. They've got to go on the road both at Texas and at Kansas. A Kansas team, by the way, that only has 2 losses in conference play. So they're not completely out of it, but Kansas would obviously need to run the table. They've got obviously a big game. Iowa State and Kansas is the forgotten game on the schedule because of the other 2 big games in the weekend. But there are really 3 big games, because if Iowa State loses to Kansas this weekend, they're probably out, especially considering their schedule the rest of the way. But if Iowa State can beat Kansas, I think it legitimizes them as a team that will have to be reckoned with, and that Texas-Iowa State game suddenly takes on even heavier weight with regards to the stakes involved. Texas's schedule is still tricky. We know that these next 3 games, they're going to be favored in all 3 games, rightfully so.
Yeah.
But they're all tricky. And Texas has played kind of an uneven brand of football at times over the course of the month of October. I got to just honestly, I can't tell you the game that it's going to happen in, but if they don't start playing more like September brand of football and less like October brand of football, I think there's a possible loss in there for Texas. And, this is a major moment this is a crossroads moment for Steve Sarkisian, because they are on the cusp of really having a great season. It's been a great start. Quite frankly, 7-1 at this point in the year, given how long it's been since they've been with that record, 8 games into the season, an absolute success. But if they fumble it away in these last 4 games, the only thing that people will remember is the fumbling away part. So it is impaired. I mentioned it a week ago. Steve Sarkisian has to be at his best. It is one of the wild cards going into Saturdays. What do you get from this offense? What happens when Sarkisian gets off the script? They're going to probably be really good in the first quarter. And I think one of the keys to this game is getting ahead early on Kansas State and making them play outside of their comfort zone. If Texas can go up 14-0, 14-3, 21-3, like they have each of the last 2 weeks, I think that's exactly what the doctor ordered. But Texas got to play better in the middle of these football games. 2 weeks in a row, they've essentially gone 40 minutes of game time with not good offense. They didn't score at all for 37 minutes of game time against Houston 2 weeks ago. And yesterday or Saturday, 40 minutes, I think it was like 40 minutes and 3 seconds or something like that. Slightly more than 40 minutes where Texas had one offensive possession that ended with a touchdown against a bad defense. You know, they have to play better against Kansas State or they can lose that game.
All right, let's take that super chat in there, Catch. Where was that, Aaron? Is that on the screen, Aaron? If it is, I don't see it. Okay. I just I've been having some problems last week as far as things not being on the screen, so I just want to make sure. JS says Sark doesn't fully realize the problems he has as a play caller. Can you do Texas fans a favor and ask him at the press conference why the 3-3-5 defense works so well against his offense, and have they made changes since UH?
Well, I mean, is he asking you that question, or is he
he's asking me that question? I mean, I want to get one. So, you know, the play, you know, JS, there's almost like a rhythm to press conference. At least I think there's a rhythm. I don't think that a lot of people think there's a rhythm, because so there's that to be said. But usually the rhythm is, hey, when a team is coming off of a 35-6 loss, where, you know, you really, that's not the, hey, what's going wrong with your team kind of time. There might be a way to build the question in that one, JS. And so I have to think about the wording of that and you know how to make it relevant for this week, obviously. But yeah, there's, I mean, clearly we know there's been some challenges, there's been some issues. It seems like that issue, it seems the main issue seems to be them throwing things on tape that they hadn't necessarily, you know, throwing things on the field they hadn't necessarily seen on tape. And then the adjustments that are in there. I feel like I asked him about like defensive adjustments and things to that effect before, but I don't know. I don't think I've asked anyone specifically asked about 3-3-5. So, Jess, let me consider it. I you know, I only get one question a week, so I got to make it count. So let me, but I will.
You can get two, but it depends on. You need a little bit of luck. You need to be early. And then you need there to be enough time that you can sneak in the back door and get one in late. They let Chip get two last week, if I'm not mistaken. And you've had two on occasion, but you're right. Depending on the order of selection, a lot of times you're just left with that one question.
And the thing is, and then this might be a week, Catch, where because Texas is won, it's a big game, there might be more people that show up at the press conference this week. So because it might be more people that show up, then there might be more mouths to feed, and that makes it a little bit more difficult. So
plus there'll be that guy that's at the press conference. It'll be like, hey, can you talk about Michael Taft and like, you know, what it means that he had 2 interceptions in 2 games and the struggles of being a walk-on. And can you just talk for 4 or 5 minutes about, you know, and it's like,
yes, correct. And
no offense to Michael Taft, who has, you know, I just as an example, I'm halfway expecting that. Plus, we are a day away from Halloween.
Oh, this. I miss Anthony. I miss Ant.
I feel like we're gonna definitely get you know what? I'm kind of interested in what the Sarks do for Halloween. I bet L'Oreal takes care of the kids in the neighborhood.
You think so?
I think she cares.
She seems like she would care.
I absolutely believe the Sarkeesians will have dope candy for Thanksgiving. I mean, for Halloween.
You think Sark ain't out there though. Sark ain't handing out no candy.
That's kind of what I'm wondering. Plus, as a parent with kids, does he let his staff go home early to take the kids
There's no way. There is no way. I haven't. Of all the things, I have never heard like, hey, Sark let everybody go early just to spend time with the family.
I told you if the Sarkeesians have a Halloween party, I would have uninvited Jeff Banks after that fake field goal against Houston.
Oh. Was it? All right. Wait, wasn't that whole thing that happened last year associated around Halloween?
Yes, that was 2 years ago, though.
2 years ago. All right. Well, I'm not.
I wasn't going to bring up Monkeygate, but yeah, that.
Well, you mentioned Banks and Halloween, and I was like, wait a second, wasn't it around this time?
It was. Yeah.
All right, I'm not asking him anything then. just let that go. We're just gonna.
We already know that he does not want your Jeff Banks questions.
We know he doesn't want me to ask him anything about Jeff Banks. And when we start talking about family members, is it like Cousin Ed from the National Lampoons?
Cousin Eddie.
Cousin Eddie, yeah, Cousin Eddie. That's kind of like Banks. Like that's his Cousin Eddie. Like he's in the family. He loves him. But he's like, don't ask me about Cousin Eddie and what the hell he's doing or what he says.
What's your vibe on this game, Anwar? Was last week good enough for this game?
The problem is, I think K-State's kind of good, Catch. And I think the problem that here's where I won't fall into the fool's gold with Texas. And I gotta stay consistent with this, Catch. When Texas seemingly faces a quarterback that has a pulse and it could be pretty good, that person has been somewhat problematic for them. Like this season, that's kind of been what's part of it. And they were able to and let me see if I can find from over the weekend. But they were able to clearly they were able to have a good offensive performance this past weekend. Will Howard was back, and so Will Howard. I mean, he didn't have it. He wasn't quote unquote outstanding per se, but he was pretty effective in what he was able to do. Again, not the best quarterback, but he's a decent quarterback. And I put Will Howard, like Donovan Smith, Dylan Gabriel. Good quarterbacks, nothing great, but just good enough. Like I don't view them as bad, but slightly above average, but not elite. He's probably Will Howard somewhere in that range for me.
It's kind of Donovan Smith-ish.
Yeah. And so I'm just like, okay, hold on. I know I've seen the script before. So before I go and say, I think the defense has solved all their problems, I think they've got all the issues that are taken care of. Let me just see what they do first against a defense that should be able to present some problems and be somewhat problematic to Maalik Murphy. I don't think I think we talked about before Maalik Murphy. Okay, I gave him a C. Did I give him a C after the game, Catch? I think it was somewhere around a C.
You did, yeah. C+.
C+, yeah. C+ is probably nice. I mean, you may be more about a C-ish when I think about it a little bit more, but
they got to get B-level quarterback grading this week. I mean, and it's why last week was really good for Maalik Murphy, right? Get a game where you get your toes wet. They really need him to play well this weekend, though, and it's a big step up for him. And like I said, it's a monster week for Steve Sarkisian because it's not just about play calling. It's not just about getting your quarterback ready to play. There are a lot of things I think coming into this game, even at 7-1 and ranked in the top 10, that they're trying to figure out. They're trying to adjust. They're trying to get better. Defensively, they're going to face, I think Kansas State's going to throw more quarterback at them than they've probably seen in any game this season other than the OU game. Kansas State, I'm fascinated by whether or not Kansas State plays more two quarterbacks this week. They didn't do it a lot last week in their win over Houston. But in the couple of weeks before that, they were really mixing this new kid, Avery Johnson, in as a run game threat at quarterback it's given teams a lot of
He
problems.
scored 5 touchdowns in the game. It was
Yes,
like
I mean, it's an element to what they do that is a bit unique for them. And I'm curious. It's a little bit like watching the Saints when they bring Taysom Hill in, right? It's like,
yeah,
you don't see it from week to week. Nobody else can quite replicate it, and until you actually defend it, there will be questions about whether you can defend it. I think, look, Texas should win this game. I want to be perfectly clear, but this is a dangerous game. And to me, this isn't about Kansas State. This is about Texas playing to a level, playing to a higher level, not playing down even to Kansas State's level. Because if they do that, they're going to find themselves in a 4-quarter game on Saturday if they play to Kansas State's level, which is lower than their own. If they play up to their level, and really, when was the last time we saw that? Baylor, Kansas, maybe? I mean, we're going to exit the month of October, and I don't know that there's a performance of the games that they played that we would point to and say, that was the game where they showed us they can be better than the team they were in September. I say this, I feel like on every show, the goal needed to be better in October than you were in September. And now you need to be better in November than you were in October and September. But they haven't made it. They can still take the step in November, but they didn't do it in October. And it's one of the reasons why they went 2-1, found themselves in 2 fourth quarter games. And, that's not going to be good enough to make the playoff. And it may not be good enough to make the Big 12 championship game. They've got to raise their level of play this week. Simple as that.
Yeah, I think that to me, Catch, one, I agree with you. Two, that level of plays, like it's both sides of the ball. Like I said, the defensive level of play. Yes, we saw Tavondre. We saw a lot of guys show up that we hadn't seen over the past couple of weeks. And we sort of make some plays. We saw the interceptions. Like we absolutely, was able to see that. But we also know that we saw this. This is just a week ago. We were watching Houston have its way with this defense, and you're thinking to yourself, what in the hell just happened? A couple of weeks ago, it was the Oklahoma team was having its way with this defense, and you're thinking to yourself, what the hell is happening? So, that consistency from this defense, that's what they need to get back to for this final stretch. But I hear Brown Hammer when he says says good morning and Maalik he trusts. But I would just have to say, Brown Hammer, like, I didn't see enough on Saturday from Maalik to make me say I 100% trust and I 100% believe. Like I saw a quarterback that got a win, and I know what the score looks like, but I also know from my own eyes that there's some interceptions that could have been had that weren't. It kind of goes both ways sometimes, but there was some interceptions that had. I didn't think Maalik played great by any stretch of the imagination, and nor did I think there was great stretches of play where I just thought this guy was on fire in this drive. Like, oh my God, like I see it. Like I saw a good quarterback. I saw a quarterback who was good enough to get the job done. I saw a quarterback who was better than the BYU quarterback. So take that with a grain of salt, right? I mean, shoot. For whatever I want to say about Maalik, it wasn't Slovis. I mean, that guy is horrible. So with all due respect to the Slovis family, the kid is not a good quarterback. So he's better than that. But when we talk about the task ahead and what lies ahead, Catch, against a good team and against things that are going to get thrown at him, and when I saw some of the rookie mistakes, and then when I saw some of, the arms, some of the passes where it may or may not should have been, again, I understand he's young. I understand he's going through the growing pains, but that's also what makes the game tricky because he is young and he is going through growing pains. And it doesn't mean Maalik's a bad quarterback. It doesn't mean he won't be really good one day. But if you're saying like, hey, I've got no problems sitting here on October the 30th saying this quarterback in start number 2 is just going to lift his team up if this is a close game. Like, I can't say that right now, Catch, just based off of what we've seen and what the sample size has been so far.
No, I 100% agree. The good news for Sarkisian is I feel like the blueprint for winning on Saturday is one that he used last year in this game when they went on the road and what certainly felt like an even scarier game considering that Kansas State team ends up winning the Big 12. You know, there were a lot of times last year where there were fans who were like, God, man, why didn't they run Bijan a little bit more, like ride that train? Well, they gave Bijan the ball 30 times last year in this game. He rushed for 209 yards. Roshan ended up running for 62, which means for their top two running backs, they ran for 271 yards in this game. And you look at Quinn Ewers, 197 yards passing. He had a couple of touchdown passes, 0 turnovers. So last year in this game, they relied heavily on the running game, and they didn't ask their quarterback to do a whole lot other than not screw it up. Don't turn the ball over. Quinn, this was a big performance last year for Quinn because coming out of that game in Stillwater, you wondered, and coming out of the game in Waco, you wondered, can he have a performance like this? Is he ready for the moment he was a year ago? I feel like Maalik Murphy's in a similar position. Can he play mistake-free? He doesn't have to be great, but he can't do what he did on Saturday either. He can't have a couple of really horrible turnovers, one in the red zone, one just – the one thing you'd say about Quinn Ewers this season for sure, Anwar, is that dude has not just been throwing the ball up for grabs, and he doesn't throw the ball into dangerous areas. And we saw Maalik do that. He's a young quarterback. Like, of course he did that. To me, this needs to be the Jonathan Brooks game. You've got one of the top 6 or 7 running backs in the country. Don't get cute.
Yeah.
This is the game to give Jonathan Brooks 30 carries. And don't tell yourself that CJ Baxter needs to play a lot because Jimmy D, we had a couple super chat questions. Jimmy D says, Blue needs more touches early and less for Baxter. 2.4 yards per carry isn't cutting it at all. Blue has that fast twitch and burst. I mean, Blue's averaging almost 2 yards more per carry this season than CJ Baxter. So it's not happening yet for CJ Baxter. And just like Sark isn't trying to lean on Jonte Cook in these games so far this season, this needs to be the Jonathan Brooks game. And I really don't even want to hear about any other running backs. Like, they haven't overused Jonathan Brooks at all. This is the week to do it. This is the week. And if I just, the thing is, when he plays CJ Baxter, usually it's in the part of the game where the offense isn't doing that great. And I think one of the problems they still have with Baxter is that when he does come into the game, and I would imagine there's a little bit of this with Blue as well. The thing about Brooks that's turned out to be so great is how versatile he is. You don't know whether they're going to run or pass it if Brooks is in the game, and you don't know if he's going to run or catch it. He's essentially replaced Jordan Whittington as the third down receiver, the third receiver in the, Whittington's usage at this point has really come down, but Brooks has really filled that void. I think we talked about it on Saturday. If I told you that, okay, this is what Mitchell does, this is what Worthy does, and there's going to be another guy that catches 4 passes for 40 yards, you go, okay, that was Whittington. Like, that makes sense, except Whittington has become Brooks. I just think that guy might be a first-team All-American. Use him like that this weekend.
100% right. I mean, I think whether CJ Baxter is not 100% healthy or not, maybe there's a health issue there of some degree, but at this point, he's not giving you. It's almost like you're taking away from the run game to give him the ball. Like, you feel like whatever CJ Baxter is giving you, you feel like Brooks could have done that and maybe even more so, more than likely. So yeah, you're right. Like, that 30-touch game where sometimes they would just let Bijan say, "All right, we're just going to give it to him," and just force it. Like that to me is yes, that 30 touch game where you just say, nah, man, like you guys are going to catch it. Sometimes you don't have to make it so difficult. Sometimes you just say to yourself, we got arguably the best running back in the country. Some have said, from NFL scouts, publications say that Jonathan Brooks is the top running back in the country. Simple. There's nothing to think about, Catch. That's just one. It's like you on your staff have hired Adam Schefter as the guy to break the stories, and you're like, all right, now, well, let's go ahead and let's mix in some other guys and let them break some stories here or there, this and that. You're like, no, I've got Adam Schefter. Like, you guys are good. Like, I don't need you guys. Go find some other things to write about. Write some reaction pieces. Like, write some other things. I've got Schefter, and if Jonathan Brooks is the number one guy, don't overthink it, man. Run him to the wheels for. He's got 4 games left. You're not
going pro after that. Like, he's got 4 games left.
You know what Charlie? Do you know what Charlie did with Deontay Foreman when they realized, like, hey, man, this guy might go pro, and we just need to get the most out of him while we can? They just hand him the ball every single damn time. They did not.
And I'm not even saying, like, he didn't need 40 touches, but you can give him 30.
You don't need 50.
Or 50. By the way, another super chat. I don't know if you were able to see this, but Sentiment Bot sent this twice.
Oh, okay.
Sorry that you had to send it twice. We can get to it. Don't worry. We'll get to the super chats. Do you think Maalik size, we can see a tush push on the goal line? This isn't the week to do that.
Yeah.
Like, if you've noticed these teams that have tried to copy the Eagles,
yeah,
it backfires on them a lot because it's not what they do. It's what the Eagles do. I think it's like 50-50. Some teams try it and it works. Other teams try it and they're fumbling the ball and it's not working. Dude, you've got an All-American. Here's the thing. In the red zone this week, I have a revolutionary idea, Anwar.
Okay.
Leave Savion Red on the sidelines. Don't get cute.
Mm-hmm.
Give the ball to Jonathan Brooks.
What?
Give your best. Look, I know this is crazy.
That's crazy.
But when they get into the red zone, use your best player.
It'll never work.
And Jonathan Brooks at this point is the best player on that offense. And yet, when they get into the red zone, and I know he got a red zone carry on Saturday, so he did. But in general, that's when it seems like they do everything other than, hey, let's do what we do best. And right now, what we do best, spread teams out, maybe go to some 12 personnel. We can even get into a bunch, but like, let's give it to Brooks. He's their best running back. Like, even on Saturday when they went into the Wildcat, I was like, look, I know they're trying to do this for Savion Red, but that dude's averaging 3 yards a carry. Why not give it to your running back that's not averaging, who's averaging twice as many yards per carry? It's just, run the Wildcat with Jonathan Brooks in the backfield. He's your best running back. And the data says it's not even close at this point. I mean, there's a reason why he's a top 6 running back in the country right now in rushing. He's doing the damn thing. Let him do the damn thing.
By the way, they tried to do that push thing earlier this year, Catch, and Jatavian Sanders caused Quinn to fumble the ball. Remember that? Remember when Jatavian tried to come behind him and push him, and he ended up knocking the ball out of Quinn's hands?
But that's what I'm saying. Like that, that's something that's like, hey, let's try something new this week. And it's like, you're going to try that new thing in a really important situation. Man, just line up and be you. And I think that one of the things that I think is frustrating Texas fans is they're 8 games through the season and Texas is still trying to figure out who they are in those areas. And you'd like going into week 9 in a big game that in those situations, like, and the thing is, when we talk about like the tush push, like the Eagles know who they are. Mm-hmm. They've practiced that. It's part of their DNA. Centibot, like the thing that I don't like about the idea is it's not really their identity. And I think that Texas's identity is staring them in the face. They've just kind of rejected it. In the name, I think of being a little cute. And I think in the name of, look, Savion Red's either their fourth or fifth running back. And they've created this little niche package for him, I think, to placate him a little bit. But he's their fourth or fifth running back. You know, like, I'm sorry. He might not need to play this week unless Texas gets way out in front. I don't understand in the biggest downs of the game convincing yourself that you're fourth. And you know what? In reality, he's their fifth best running back. He's not better than Jaden Blue. We've seen enough of Jaden Blue, even in limited playing time, even usually late in games. That dude's averaging almost 6 yards a carry. Yeah. You know, I think C.J. Baxter needs to be taking less carries, and Jaden Blue needs to be getting more carries. But both of those guys are in front of Savion Red. And you've already thrown the pass, so you've done that. Like, I don't know. I don't see anybody else on the entire team who's fourth or fifth at their position being placated to and like, hey, we're going to make sure you don't transfer. So we're going to throw you a bone a couple of times a game at the expense of the team. Because you're putting your fourth or fifth best running back in a position where they have a critical like their impact on the game is critical, and it did not work last week. And, you know, I know I'm not piling on Savion Red. I'm only pointing out where he is in general in the structure of this team. And I don't know that it's a great idea to put it's if you were doing that with Roschon Johnson a year ago, you would say, well, he's our second running back, but he could be the number one running back at a lot of schools. He's going to play in the NFL. Hell, we watched him last night on Sunday Night Football. Like, that would make a lot of sense. I don't know that Savion Red I don't know that he's good enough to have such an impactful role, but they do have guys that are.
Yeah, I think they in the don't transfer package, because that's what it really should be called. If in the don't transfer package, I think he's an identified catch that CJ Baxter needs to make sure get some touches so he feels happy. Savion Red needs to get some touches so he feels like he's happy. If I gotta lose one, then it'll just be Jaden Blue. Like, I'll just if one's got to go, that I'm okay with Jaden leaving, because that's what it boils down to. We're in their pecking order.
Actions speak louder than words, and at this point, that's what the actions are telling us. But the thing is, you think about next season, because I was thinking about this a little bit. Okay, so Blue goes pro. Not Blue, but Brooks goes pro after this season. So we know Baxter's the default number one. Blue probably, they bring in Gibson and they bring in Clark, but two guys when this season is over with that will have to decide what their future is in the program is both Red and Blue. And I wonder if, given that they've got two other young running backs that Sark recruited coming in, I don't know. Like, what happens next year at the running back position is really interesting. Is Red getting enough that he thinks, well, next year my role will increase? Blue clearly can't think that right now. And I would imagine Blue's a frustrated player. I mean, he probably feels like he's better than CJ Baxter. He probably feels like he's better than Savion Red. The only guy he probably thinks, you know what, I can't, Brooks is balling. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, he probably thinks he's the guy that should have a role in this offense among the backups. And, you know, from an average yards per carry standpoint, he's not wrong.
You're definitely not incorrect. It'd just be interesting. There's an interesting dynamic in the rotation that happens in that room more so than any other position. So,
you want a hot take for Monday?
Yeah.
CJ Baxter was an overrated prospect.
Oh, well, that's hot takes.
Now, that doesn't mean I don't think he's good, and that doesn't mean I don't think he can be very good, but, you know, he essentially had a Bijan-esque ranking. He's not that. I mean, I know he's been banged up a little bit, but he's averaging 4 yards per carry, which is not good at this level. I mean, that's not good in the NFL. That's definitely not good in college. And we're 8 games in, and I don't know that I've seen him have a couple of nice plays, nice runs, where you're like, oh yeah, that guy's got a chance to be really good. But I don't know that I've seen a guy that I think is special. We're 8 games in now. I've not once seen CJ Baxter and thought to myself, holy hell, give that guy the ball 10 more times today. So my Monday hot take is Texas has, I think, a really nice, good back in CJ Baxter, but I've seen nothing to think that he warranted a national top 30 to 50 ranking a year ago.
Benji says, Catch is down on CJ and Arch, who is next Cook. Are you down on Arch? Did that come out of your mouth at some point?
No.
Okay. I just
no. Not down on Cook either. And I'm not down on Baxter. I feel like I'm making an appropriately placed observation on Baxter. He's averaging 4 yards per carry. Like that's 0.2 away from being in the threes. It's just show me. I hadn't seen it showed to me yet. Because believe me, I'll pivot and change my mind if he gives me a reason to. Javier, it's okay. Oh,
that's older. That's an old one. That's an old one. That's earlier.
For some reason, the chat, Brandon, now, is this a hot take?
Oh, my God.
Quinn should have been a 4-star. Oh, I'm sorry, Anwar.
Wow.
We're re-ranking guys on the show now.
This is, about overreaction Mondays. Like, goodness gracious. We go.
Hey, I like the hot take. Brandon taking it one step further. Baxter is less overrated than Quinn.
Okay.
Look, man.
Wow. Okay.
You know what? Quinn has not played at a 5-star level yet. But God, the thing about Quinn, he's playing really well this season. That's Brandon. You can't take that away from him. He's having the second best passing efficiency season in the history of the Texas program. So put some respect on that name. The problem with Quinn is we're never going to see the best of Quinn Ewers. When Quinn Ewers as a 4th-year player, Anwar, might legitimately be a Heisman candidate. But he's going to be long gone by then.
Yeah.
And, I understand where Brandon is coming from because I don't think he's played at the number 1 overall player. He ain't Caleb Williams. And Caleb Williams is what it looks like when you're the number 1 overall player in a class. And Quinn hasn't been that yet. The problem is, by the time, if Quinn stuck around long enough, he might actually get to the level that would make Brandon take that back. But I think he'll be into the NFL before we ever see him truly hit his highs as a player.
Yeah. I mean, we're at decision making point at one, at some point where, if Texas drops a couple of games, I mean, is Quinn coming back to lead them to a victory versus Texas Tech to get this team into the Alamo Bowl, right? I mean, that's probably not happening. So, it'll be interesting to me, Catch. I think my hot take is Texas needs to continue winning games if they want to see Quinn at all again this season. You're just keeping it a buck, because that guy does have the NFL that's out there. He does have enough film or tape and observations where people are like, hey, I mean, he was viewed as a top guy going into the season. And so at that point, yeah, to me, Maalik needs to, perform well over the next couple of weeks, or it is the Maalik Murphy show probably for the rest of the year. So, the rankings and all those kind of things, it may not be as a 5-star at this moment. I'd have to think of some of the 5s. You have a good list, like you said, the Caleb Williams of the world, so on and so forth. But yeah, for me, if you want to see Quinn at all, at all. This team better win. If not, then you're probably going to see this Maalik Murphy show for the rest of the year.
You know what's interesting is you put that comment in the war room on Thursday night, and people were like, "Oh, tell us something we don't already know, right?" Because on the surface, it was kind of a no shit Sherlock kind of a statement. I think the thing that you didn't do, and I actually thought about doing, but I didn't because it wasn't my section. I didn't want to fucking put my words into your, you know what I mean? I didn't want to write but I think if you'd gone written one more little paragraph and really outlined it like, yo, what's in it for Quinn if they don't win? Like, it seems like a no duh comment, but they really do need to win. Or if it's Quinn and the people around him, like, they do have to ask questions about, hey, we are risking something here. Is it worth the risk? And if Texas isn't in a position to go to the Big 12 championship game, you could make the case that the answer would be no. So I think you're 100% right. It's been in my brain all weekend long because I thought I knew what you were trying to say, but I think you didn't want to yell fire in a crowded theater by outlining that, and that be the only thing in the war room that people on War thinks that Quinn's going to go pro and he's not going to, it's not that, but there are scenarios that are realistic that maybe we have seen Quinn's last down of football at Texas. I don't think that's going to happen, but there's a scenario where it would probably make sense based on, I think, what they want to do to not risk themselves anymore.
He's already hurt. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, they can't say like, well, that's a hypothetical. They're like, that's their reality is he's already hurt. He's got to recover. You know, I mean, I think there. Should I do it? I think the air of secrecy around Quinn's return centers a little bit around what may or may not happen with this team.
Yeah.
And because you don't want to say, what you can't have is them say, Quinn is this is a 3-week injury for Quinn. All right. Let's just keep it a buck. All right. F it. You can't say this is a 3-week or 4-week injury for Quinn. And then all of a sudden Texas drops 2 games. And now everyone's like, all right, well, he's supposed to be back for Tech. And it's like, but the Texas already lost 2 games. Like, and now they got to make a business decision. And then what do you say? He had a setback? Or what do you say at that point? Like, I think the air of secrecy, if we just be honest with you, Catch, the air of secrecy has a lot to do about what his NFL future will look like. I just don't think everyone's willing to come out and say that. Period.
John Hendrick says, did you see how accurate Maalik was on the deep ball? Saw Sark's pants stiffen. Honestly, there wasn't enough there.
No.
I can't say that I put my head on a pillow on Saturday or Sunday night dreaming about the deep balls that Maalik threw in the game. But look, there were some good things that Maalik did in the game, and that includes throwing the ball down the field a little bit. They'll need more from him. Like, I think the best thing that happened is he got the training wheels game out of the way. BYU was a perfect patsy for him to go out, make a couple of some mistakes, but make some good plays as well. But boy, they're going to need consistency from Maalik this week. They, drive in and drive out. He's going to need to be better than he was on Saturday. This team can't afford to go score 1 touchdown in 40 minutes of actual game time. It'll put a lot of pressure on them in those other 20 minutes to get a lot of things right. And again, I said this at the very outset. I think this has a chance to be the most important game of Sarkisian's coaching career. Because I think if they can get through this, you can start to see the light at the end of the tunnel with them getting into the Big 12 championship game. But that doesn't mean that TCU and Iowa State aren't tricky. This is probably the best team they're going to play the rest of the way. There will be trickier games on the road, maybe, but Kansas State's the best team that Texas will play down the stretch, and they're not awesome. This is a team that Texas with Quinn Ewers, I think, should beat by 2 touchdowns. I do think playing with a backup quarterback throws all of that into doubt, but I still think it's a game that Texas should win. They're the better, more talented team. Can they play like that on Saturday, and can they be the best coach team on Saturday?
It's interesting, though, Catch, and I know we're going to have to wrap up soon, but Kansas State hasn't beat Texas in a while.
Like 6 times.
Yeah, I mean, that's a hell of a streak to have, right? I mean, to have against a team. You know, we've talked a lot about, you know, Catch and I, we talked about over the previous decade how other programs have had some success against Texas, like the Oklahoma States of the world and the TCUs when Gary Patterson was there. But that Texas has a good little streak going against Kansas State, and they, you know, it's been a while. You said it's been 6 straight, right? 6 straight that Texas has. So
ever since Tom showed up, Tom, say what you will about Tom, but Tom got the Kansas State thing turned around, and Sarkisian has continued it.
Yeah, even in a bad season, they found a way to beat K-State, right? So, you know, this is for. You know, for as big of a game as this is for Texas, this is definitely big for K-State. Like, if you're climbing, like, you've got to get that monkey off your back as well to say, all right, it's been a long time since Kansas State has had any success against a Texas team.
Yeah, but he won the Big 12 last year and played in a major bowl game, so they're probably not too focused on Texas. Plus, Texas is going to be gone after this year. So even if he has a Texas monkey on his back, that monkey's about to go to the SEC. And he can just shrug his shoulders and go, yeah, we didn't do great against them, but guess what? We don't ever have to worry about that again.
Fair enough. All right, Catch, give me the last thing. We got a super chat that came in, and then after the super chat, let's kind of get you know, with less drops by Worthy and Maalik looks better now.
A little bit of that is true, but Maalik also you know, a lot of those balls were behind him. Look, I agree with you, Brandon, in this. Xavier Worthy played, I thought, take the punt return out of the game. I thought Xavier Worthy played his worst game of the season. He needed to make some catches to pick his young quarterback up. However, you know, let's not act like Maalik was throwing dimes out there that were not difficult to catch. A lot of those balls were behind him. The one in the end zone, though, he absolutely should have caught. He let the ball get into. I mean, the ball hit him right in the shoulder pads. I mean, it wasn't like he got deflected away. Xavier just didn't catch it. But at the end of the day, that's the passing game, and every guy on this team needs to be better. Everybody. It's a stiffer challenge. Kansas State might be as good as Oklahoma is. Because Oklahoma has revealed themselves to be more like the team that we thought Texas was going to kick the crap out of in the Cotton Bowl. Texas and Oklahoma have this in common. They both have looked great in one game this season against a really good team.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, there's it's like a roller coaster ride of, you know, I mean, Texas was in a fourth quarter game with Houston 9 days ago. So, you know, you can't call Texas great right now. But there's enough time left in this season and enough quality opponents and enough big moments that if Texas handles their business by the end of the year, maybe they will reach that level. The scary thing is we thought they were close to hitting that level and hitting those levels. And Anwar, this will be my final comment. They look like a team approaching those levels, and they just kind of have leveled out. It wasn't just the Oklahoma game. There have been a number of performances this season where it feels like they played down to the competition, whether they're playing at home or on the road. They've actually been a better road team this season, I think, than they've been a home team. But then they did go on the road to Houston, and it was never like they almost lost that game. That wasn't what happened, but it was a tie game deep into the fourth quarter. That did happen, and Houston did get screwed on a placement of the ball situation that might have, I can only say might. We don't know that they definitely would have pushed that ball in and scored, but, you know, that game could have even been trickier than it turned out to be. Let's see Steve Sarkisian, these coaches, and these players put together a great week of practice and come out and play their best game of the season on Saturday. Because if they do that, they'll win. And if they do that, I think they'll start to feel really good about what's left in front of them in order to make a Big 12 championship game. They'll have the tiebreaker advantage on Kansas State, which might not be an unimportant thing when we get to the end of the season.
The show is brought to you by RogueShop.com. Make sure you use that promo code Orange Blood to get your discount there. Catch, what do you got to say?
Rogue Shop weekend at the Ketchum household.
Oh, was it? Was it, huh?
Well, because I got left alone. The wife and the kids went to do like some garage sale stuff at their mom's house, and then they had church yesterday, and I was alone for a lot of the weekend, and no, it was a Rogue Shop weekend. Well, I'm about to make it a Rogue Shop morning, but I haven't quite lifted off yet.
Well, especially after the Cowboys. I mean, the way they started that game yesterday. Catch, not only was it Rogue Shop for you, for the Cowboys, your fantasy team, you got another 1-point win, Catch, which is crazy.
Well, not another 1 point. I had a 1-point win.
You had another victory like a couple of weeks ago that was only like a point or so.
I have to go back and look. I feel like I've been beating most teams.
I feel like, because I remember saying something on the show.
I'm about to look.
Yeah. Tell me.
No. The other closest game I've had all year, I won by 6. I won by 8. I won by 47. I won by 7. I've had some ones like, in the 1-score games ish, like 3 or 4. I've had, I think, 4 wins under 7 points.
That's pretty good. Hey, a win's a win. Like,
I'm taking it. Hey, I have the highest scoring team in the league, but sometimes it's the luck of the draw. I beat Dorian in week 3, 159-152. That's just bad luck on his part, Yeah. Those are the worst when your team's awesome and you just play a team that was a little more awesome. My team's been really good lately, and I was just okay yesterday, but I survived.
It's all. Hey, listen,
you were trying to survive. You got a big Monday night in front of you.
A big one, big game, and if I can get past this one, we'll see. Good luck to Jacoby Myers.
If you win, you're in a position to potentially get a first-round bye with a win tonight. If you lose, I think you're thinking you just got to make the playoffs. But that's the thin line in our league sometimes, the difference between if you finish this week with 3 losses versus 4.
Let me see. Hold on 1 second. Catch. Did I beat I did. I did beat Shruti before. Okay, so I am tied with him. I do see what's at stake here. All right, well, I'll be watching in anticipation of Jacoby Myers.
It's a big one for you, man. It's a big one.
It is big. What do you got? What do you got on the show today?
A lot of similar sounding stuff to what we talked about today. We'll do the full wrap up of Texas and BYU, and we'll talk about all the major talking points coming out of that game. We'll listen to what Sark has to say today. We'll react to that. It's okay. Mondays are easy to do. There's so much to talk about. It'll be a typical Monday show.
Okay, sounds good. And by the way, Max leaves for PSG on Wednesday.
That's wild.
It's so wild.
By the way, did you see what happened? Marseille in the Lyon-Marseille game? They attacked the bus. The game had to get canceled. They were throwing rocks and stuff at the bus, and like the Lyon manager needed serious medical attention. To say he got bloodied from the rock attack would be an understatement. Okay. And now you're sending him to the belly of the beast.
Yes, have fun, son. Time to be a man.
They take that free football seriously now.
By the way, Paris has, last time I checked a few weeks ago, they had an infestation of bed bugs in all their hotels. So there is that as well.
Oh, God.
A massive infestation. It was kind of bad. Hopefully it's under wraps by then. All right, check out Jeff Ketchum. You guys can check him here at noon to 3. Him and Chad Hastings. doing their House Divided. Alex will be here at 3:30. I'm sure he's going to have his thoughts. Maybe some of his grades might be up. Early grades for Alex as he's going through the tape. And of course, tonight, right, Aaron, we will have the OB Outsiders as well. And then, of course, wake up tomorrow morning with Horns up. We got everything for you. You got nowhere to go. We're being consistent. We ain't going anywhere. We are 10 toes down. So take a quick break. No Sarkeesian's coming at 11. Then come right back on. Hit and subscribe to the channel. If you subscribe to the channel, you'll get the notification when the show comes on. You won't have to worry about, oh, did I miss it? Did I have to go back and replay? You're going to get a notification to your phone that the show has started. You go and check them out. Listen to that work while you're in the car, all that. I'll be honest with you, after Start Talks, I used to go ahead and set up my laptop while I'm there at UT, and then I listen to Chad and see what those guys say. I always listen to see if they mention my name. So it doesn't. I'm like, I guess I had a good question or not. All right, Catch. Go ahead. I'm going to get out of here. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Make sure you check out the Rogue Shop products. Until then, we'll see you guys next week. Everyone, take care. Peace.